Welcome, everybody, to Beyond Code Construction Benefits for Inland Texas. Yesterday, we talked about coastal Texas. I am going to cover a lot of the same material today. There were several people who were on the call yesterday as well, but I do want to assure you we're going to have a bigger focus on the inland high wind portion, and we're going to talk a little bit more about hail. So let's go ahead and get started today. And let's see, Jasmine, if you could launch that first poll. I guess I should introduce myself first. Like I said, it's been a Monday here this morning. My name is Sonia Sheffield. For those of you who were not here yesterday, I'm the Technical Outreach Director for Smart Home America. Jasmine is helping me. She's moderating today. She's the project coordinator. This is what the poll refers to. Which house would you rather insure? House A or House B? These houses were actually built inside a testing facility. This is a real live test. We'll see a really short video just after this. But if you could let me know which house you'd rather insure, which do you think is going to be the better risk for y'all? Okay, a couple more people to answer. I see we have great turnout today. Welcome. If you're just now getting on, the question is which house, the text on the screen says which house would you rather live in, but really which house would you rather insure as well? Talking all about insurance and risks today. Okay, we still have some people logging in, so we'll just hold here for just a minute. Okay. Excellent, Jasmine. If you go ahead and close that poll, we'll go ahead and share it. So for some reason, everybody said B. Nobody wants to insure House A. I mean, I don't. I don't want to live there either. So let's go ahead and move on. We're going to show a short video about those two houses. So this is a testing facility, before I start the video, in South Carolina where these two houses were built. The difference between these two houses is about $3,000. So this house was built multiple times. Yep, and you can see the one house is just not doing well. The other house that is built to a beyond code standard did great on all those tests. So just a couple of notes. Please use the chat box to ask any questions. If you have technical difficulties, please also use the chat box. We'll try to get to you as quickly as possible. And hopefully Jasmine will let me know. Jasmine, if you see somebody having technical difficulties, feel free to pipe up. To receive CE credit for this course, you must attend the entire program and participate. That just means taking the reviews and the quizzes. It doesn't mean you have to get 100% on everything. You just need to show that you were actually there and not, turn your computer on, walk away. You will need a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil for a short exercise. This is something very informal. It's just kind of fun. This class is recorded. We will take 2 5-minute breaks. And to get your certificate for this class, please make sure that you go through all of the resources included in the Thinkific course. When you open the resources at the bottom, there's a little button that says complete and continue. Just click through all of them. You are free to download any of them that you think will be useful for you. The class goals today are to demonstrate the need for beyond code construction. And for those of you who were in yesterday's class, not just for people on the coast. We will introduce the terminology and the methods and principles of what that means. What is beyond code construction and how do you make it work? We're going to share some references and links for your reference, and we'll talk about the benefits to your clients and to you, the producer. So let's start with some statistics. 64% of homes are underinsured. So that is, if you look at the little house icon there, that's the dark green. It may look black on your end. Those are people, more than half are underinsured. They're underinsured by an average of 24%. That's a big amount. So for a $200,000 home, that's $48,000. That means if your home is completely destroyed, There's $48,000 that the homeowner needs to come up with on their own to become whole. Most people don't have that kind of money in the bank. 75% of businesses are underinsured. That is 3/4. Again, demonstrated by the little storefront icon over there. They're underinsured by even a larger percentage, by 40%. So for a $5,000 business, it's about $200,000. We're talking mostly about small businesses here. Most communities are made up mostly of small businesses. We always think about the big employers, but actually most of our businesses are small to medium-sized businesses, and they do not have the reserves. If they have a disaster that completely takes their building out, they don't have that $200,000. They go under, which is why during a natural disaster, 40% of businesses close. So our vision, Smart Home America's vision, is sustainable, resilient communities. This is an example of how we can make a sustainable community. This house is a Habitat for Humanity house. So this is not a custom home. This is not a huge, expensive home. This is a house that was built by Habitat for Humanity. This house went through Hurricane Michael in 2018. Hurricane Michael was a Category 5 when it hit Mexico Beach, Florida. This house is not very far inland. You can see the houses around it. Now, there were about 5 or 6 of these houses built in Mexico Beach, all in the same neighborhood. One of them had a piece of siding that had come loose. That was it. That was the only damage these houses sustained. This means that these people who lived here were able to move back into their house. Yeah, they might not have had power or water, but they had a roof over their head. They didn't have to leave their community. They could go back to work once work was open. The thing is we know what to do. There is research out there that suggests to us and tells us what we need to do to make this work. What do we need to do to make houses more resilient? These houses all look intact, right? I mean, you should be able to move into them, correct? But take a closer look at that roof damage. Roof damage often allows a lot of water in, which means that you have damage inside of the house, and the house may or may not be livable on the inside. Like I said before, I'm from Smart Home America. We tend to think about smart homes as being houses that are connected to the internet, the Ring doorbell you have on the front of your house that shows you who's delivering packages, who's ringing your doorbell, who's knocking on your door. But we here at Smart Home America think of a smart home as a house that can resist the wind and the rain. It can resist water coming from the sky and water rising out of rivers or creek beds. And because of those things, it's more resilient. It's easier and more affordable to adequately insure, to make sure that if you do have a disaster, you can become whole. When all of those things are in place, then we think about things like energy efficiency and making your house green and healthy. And once all those things are in place, then we can talk about adding the Ring camera and having Alexa order your groceries for you. We exist to give you information to educate your clients, your homeowners. We educate stakeholders in the community. Our ultimate goal is to get this information to homeowners and business owners, but we do that by educating various stakeholders and insurance companies, insurance adjusters, insurance agents. You guys are on the front lines of keeping communities whole. If people in the community, businesses are well insured, that community can recover. If it's not well insured, we all know what that looks like. It's not pretty. But to be well insured, it needs to be a good risk as well. You are part of that resilient machine. You see the little start arrow there? It starts with insurance. Information I'm bringing to you was actually developed by IBHS. IBHS is the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. They are funded by the property insurance industry. State Farm is a member of IBHS. They do research on how materials and ways you put materials, so methods that you put materials on, can become storm and disaster resistant. This is their testing facility in South Carolina. It is a $40 million research facility. You can see it's got 105 fans. Those are 6 feet tall. They can create winds up to 130 miles per hour. So that's big winds that they can create. They can mimic tornadoes, small tornadoes, and hurricanes in that facility. And they built houses, those 2 houses that we saw at the beginning, those were built in that facility, and then they blew wind at it. They have 4 primary areas of research: wind, rain, hail, and wildfire. We are not going to talk about wildfire today. We're going to talk about the rest of them. As of February 1st, over 35,000 homes have been built or re-roofed to the standard that IBHS has developed. It's called Fortified. It is a beyond code standard that has been shown to resist the wind, the rain, and the hail. And this map is accurate as of February 1st. And just a side note, there is an older program called Fortified for Safer Living. That program is no longer active. Those houses are not listed on here. There was not that many. But if you happen to know somebody who had a Fortified for Safer Living house, that's not included in the statistic. So let's back up. Let's talk about building mitigation and resilience and how does that affect insurance. So first, we're going to talk about building code. So what is a building code? A building code is simply a collection of regulations that is adopted by any municipality that governs how buildings are constructed. And usually municipalities have a little bit different code for commercials opposed to residential. We're going to talk strictly about residential today, about homes. And so those building codes are there to protect people. And they do a good job. These are houses that went through Hurricane Harvey. And as you can see, the more recent the building code, the better the house did. No big surprise. Building codes change all the time. And building codes learn. So as they see problems with older building codes, they update them. So new codes are better. They resist storms better. You can see there at the bottom, the 2017 house looks, it's pretty intact. If the roof stayed, it's hard to tell from this picture whether or not that felt allowed any water in. And we only see one side of it. The roof covering did get blown off. But did that felt protect inside? It's hard to tell from the picture, but that building is still in place. You can see the house that was built in 2000 is a complete loss. There's nothing left of it. So building codes do work. This is just a bar graph showing loss events from 1980 to 2018. And what I want to point out, there's a bunch of different, so like earthquakes are the little red at the bottom. At the very top is extreme temperature, forest fires, drought. But the biggest portion of all of those bars is that green section. That is tropical storms, so our hurricanes, convective storms, which are our tornadoes. So those areas, the tropical storms, extratropical storms, and those convective inland storms, those are the biggest losses. Okay, so these are houses that also went through Hurricane Michael. And again, that was a Category 5, so it's a very strong storm. And you can see the building code work. These houses are all relatively intact. But what I want to point out is look at the roofs of these houses. Look at all the blue tarps. So what does this mean for people living in their house? Well, if you look up close, look at all the debris at the street. Look at all the carpeting. And it's hard to tell, but there's wood, there's furniture in those piles. These people aren't living in these homes. Yes, the home is still there. They will be able to move back into it. They don't have to rebuild their entire home, but they're taking everything out of the house because everything's destroyed because of the roof damage, because of the water that got in. Smart Home America worked with local code officials to create the Coastal Construction Code Supplement, and that has been adopted in coastal counties in Alabama, and we're working to get it adopted other places along the Gulf Coast. It has made a huge difference in how our businesses and homes weather storms. We have also created an inland construction code supplement. We're hoping to mimic that same success that we've had on the coast in Alabama inland. So let's turn to mitigation. So what does mitigate mean? Well, mitigate literally means to make less severe, less harsh, less awful. So we talk about mitigation in insurance all the time. One of the most common things I hear on the coast is adding hurricane shutters is a form of mitigation. You may have wind mitigation in your area. It's putting better shingles on. It might be nailing your drip edge more closely. There's different things you can do that mitigate. Another form, so a great form of mitigation, it's not something you have a lot of control over, but whether or not a fire hydrant is close to your house. You know, your rate is a little lower because if there's a fire at your house, not going to have any problem getting the water there, right? So it's a better risk. So mitigation is all about making things less painful in the sense that it's a lower risk. The insurance services office actually does a lot of work with mitigation to figure out what rate should be in a community. And they look at a bunch of different things. One of the things that they look at is the building codes. It's called BSEGS, the Building Code Effectiveness Grading Schedule. And they're looking for two things. They're looking for the building code being up to date and well enforced. Your building code is only as good as its enforcement. So you have a really strict building code, but nobody ever goes out and inspects it. There's no telling how the house is built, right? I mean, in theory, it's built to the building code, but there's no guarantee. So I'm going to quote them directly. Municipalities with well-enforced, up-to-date code should demonstrate better loss experience, and insurance rates can reflect that. So a more stringent building code that is well enforced will bring you lower insurance rates, full stop, just the way it works. So the traditional paradigm has been a big storm rolls through, everything gets destroyed or a large portion of things gets destroyed. And the inclination is to build it back as quickly as possible because people can't go back to work. Kids can't go back to school until all this stuff is back in place. When you build things back very quickly, it's hard to have a lot of stringent standards because people just need to get back in their house, right? People just need to get back to work. So what we're talking about is a new paradigm where those mitigation items, those things that you could do to make your house stronger, happen before the storm. It's proactive, it's goal-oriented. The goal is to minimize property damage, not just the house stays upright, but property damage. So people can get back in their houses and get back to their lives more quickly. It is sustainable in the sense that the less stuff you're taking to the street in the landfill, the better, right? It is absolutely affordable. I showed you those Habitat for Humanity homes at the beginning, and making it community-wide is what really makes your whole community resilient. Because, for example, if you have a resilient home that survives the storm, but the place where you work is closed because it got destroyed by the storm and had no backup and was not adequately insured, well, that's not really resilience if you're out there looking for a new job. Okay, so we've thrown the word resilience around. What does that word mean? Resilience simply means the ability to bounce back. So, and the best way I can think of it is if you've seen those stress balls that you can squeeze, you squeeze it and you let it go and it goes back to its original size. That's ideal resilience, where everything goes back to the way it was before. So this actually, you can see there's a house on this picture and it survived. That's Hurricane Michael. It absolutely survived. But is this resilience? There is nothing around that house. Yes, for that one family that lived in that house, their house was resilient, but they have no neighbors. And if this is, what their entire neighborhood, entire town looks like, they may not have a job. They may not have a school to go to. That's not really true resilience. We want to minimize the destruction of personal property across communities. So resilient communities, because they're resilient, can reduce spending, actually. You reduce spending after the storm. You have less cleanup, less debris to take to the landfill. You have less money that you have to spend trying to house people who can't move back into their house. It keeps the property tax base in place and the income tax base because your jobs stay there. Your local jobs stay there because everything's more resilient. People are able to go back to work, so they're still paying taxes. Their house isn't wiped away, so they're still paying property taxes. And your local economy just keeps moving. I mean, it's really the best thing for an entire community. So how do we get there? I'm going to give an example of Hurricane Sally. There were actually several different hurricanes. So up until now, Fortified has really been restricted and concentrated, I should say, along the coast. Okay. So we have a lot of examples of how they fare in hurricanes. So Hurricane Sally, what made Hurricane Sally important for Fortified was not how strong it was, but how many fortified homes it hit. So Hurricane Sally was a Category 2. And if you're inland in tornado speak, that would be about an EF1. But of course, it's much bigger. You can see it's huge. It takes, it's affecting a large area. But what made Sally really dangerous was it moved at 2 to 4 miles an hour. So in the eye wall, that little center spot there, you can see some of the beach areas that went through the eye wall sat in the eye wall winds where the highest winds are for 8 hours. So yeah, it was definitely a huge test of Fortified. So at the time Sally hit, there were almost 17,000 fortified homes on the Gulf Coast there, in that area where Sally hit. So the question is, how did they do? So remember, this is an EF1 tornado, but you have to imagine your EF1 tornado is going to sit on you for 8 hours. It was pretty intense. 95% of fortified homes did not have enough damage to make an insurance claim. That's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive. And the numbers are still coming in. We actually expect that number to be higher. And this number does include any kind of claim. So if a tree falls on your house, that is going to be a claim. Absolutely. And there were a lot of trees down after Sally because she just hung around for so long. So I want to make it clear, when we're talking about beyond code construction, we cannot prevent all damage. This is Moore, Oklahoma, 2013. This is the Moore, Oklahoma tornado. That was an EF5. So this is the worst part of the path. You can see in the back of that picture. That's where it was its most intense. We can't prevent all of that. But as you move away from the center of the tornado, we can prevent some of this damage, and we can absolutely prevent on the very outer edges. We can prevent all of that damage. So let's do a real quick review. This is an EF tornado versus Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale. So we are talking about 1, 0, and 1, EF zeros and 1. IBHS engineers believe the damage from these two tornado strengths can be not minimized, but eliminated, like completely gone. They believe that damage from an EF2 can be minimized, like we can really get rid of a lot of that damage. So now let's go back to that Moore, Oklahoma tornado, and let's look and see. So what would that have meant if all the houses, if all the neighborhoods that this tornado went through were fortified? What does that mean? So a tornado is like a hurricane. It's more intense on the inside than it is on the outside. And tornadoes, like hurricanes, are named for their strongest portion. Hurricanes are named for, they are leveled. So Sally was a Category 2 because she was a Category 2 when she hit. Of course, tornadoes are always over land, so they're going to be named for the highest amount of power. For the EF5 tornado, this is EF0 winds on the outside of this path. And these are the EF1 winds. So remember, using fortified should completely eliminate all of the damage in this area. This is the EF2 winds. IBHS engineers believe they can minimize that damage. Now we're getting into the 3s, the 4s, and the 5s. So this is the 5. Fortunately, tornadoes are like living creatures. They get stronger, they get weaker, they change. Fortunately, that EF5 area was incredibly small. I mean, thank goodness. So this is the EF4 and EF5 together. These are the areas that will still sustain pretty heavy damage. That these areas, I mean, people still need to have a safe room. This is the EF3. Again, there's going to be damage in this area, even with fortified. But the EF2, that yellow band, the damage is going to be minimized there. And this area is the area where damage can be completely eliminated. So that is more than half of the path if you compare them. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what kind of tornadoes happen. Now, this is information from Oklahoma. I don't have information from Texas for you today, but it's similar. So EF0s are almost 42% of all tornadoes, and EF1s are about 32%. But together, the EF0s and EF1s, that is 74% of all tornadoes that occur in Oklahoma. And I'm guessing the statistics are similar in Texas. All over the entire country, the vast majority of tornadoes are EF0s and EF1s. And in this case, even a place that has some really big, nasty tornadoes, 74% of them are in those two categories that IBHS engineers believe we can completely eliminate damage from these two tornadoes. Okay, so if you add the EF2s in, which is it's 19, almost 20%. If you add those in where they believe damage can be minimized, that's 92.9%. So that's almost 93% of all tornadoes that happen fortified will either eliminate or minimize damage from. That is not an insignificant number of tornadoes. That is definitely, it's worth looking at how this fortified system works. So let's do a real quick review. IBHS, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, they do research on materials and methods, and then they make recommendations for how to implement these things, how to build. We are Smart Home America. We educate stakeholders. That is our job. We are educators. Building codes are absolutely critical. We saw that they absolutely make a difference, but anywhere you go, no matter how strong the building code is, it is the minimum standard that you can legally build to. So building code is always minimum. You can always go beyond what is code. Mitigation and resilience. So those two things together affect claims, they affect insurability and your insurance rate. We absolutely can create better outcomes by putting mitigation in the front and creating more resilient communities. So we're going to have a little review quiz, and Jasmine, I hope that poll is there for you. Yay. Okay, awesome. Thank you. This was one of the technical problems I was having this morning. I'm just going to read through the polls, and feel free, guys can start answering them as soon as you want. True or false, Smart Home America provides grant money to insurance providers to help their clients re-roof. True or false, when a new house is built to code, you know you are building to the industry's highest standard. And true or false, communities must wait for a catastrophic storm to wipe away existing buildings in order to benefit from new resilient construction methods. So go ahead and take your time, and just remember, we appreciate participation, and participation is required for the CE. So I'm going to wait until almost everybody has participated. If you do have any trouble with the polls, like for some reason if it's not coming up for you and you need to participate, please, you can send a chat with your answers. You can send it to me directly or to Jasmine directly. Okay, still waiting on a couple more people. Go ahead and close that out, Jasmine. So now let's talk about it. So, true or false, Smart Home America provides grant money to insurance providers to help their clients re-roof. Oh, how I wish we did that. I would love to be able to come to each and every one of you with money for your clients who need help re-roofing. Nothing would make my day more. Unfortunately, we are a small nonprofit and we don't have grant money to give. So yeah, unfortunately. When a new house is built to code, you know you're building to the industry's highest standard. No matter how good your code is, you can always do better than code. Code is actually the minimum local standard that you can legally build to. What's supposed to happen is your building code officials are going to make sure that you're building to that code. If you go beyond that, you're not going to be penalized. But if you go under that, they're going to stop you and make you fix whatever is not up to code. True or false? So that one is false. True or false? Communities must wait for a catastrophic storm to wipe away existing buildings in order to benefit from new resilient construction methods. This is false. And we will talk about this more as we go on and show about how existing homes can be retrofitted and how much it helps. Okay, thank you, Jasmine. You can close that. Now, if everybody could get their piece of paper and a pen, we're going to do a real quick little exercise. I'm going to get my piece of paper. So I am going to ask you at the end of this to share, if you have a camera on your computer, if you could share and show your drawing. But you don't have to, that's not required, but do please do it because it kind of is fun and it makes a point. So you have 15 seconds. Is everybody ready? Everybody got their pen? 15 seconds to draw your dream house. Ready? Go. Okay, pencils down. Now, I do this all the time and I stink at it. So I'm going to show mine first. If anybody else could please turn their camera on and share. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I've got my green screen on. It's not going to work. Thank you, Gabriella. Oh, wow, you got far more done than I did, Hillary. Okay, thank you for everybody that participated. And I understand not everybody can do that. So the point of this, so look at your dream house. I mean, it's a little sketch, right? But one of the things, not everybody, almost everybody draws the same thing. You have walls and a roof, right? Those are the things you have. This is what Fortified is all about. When you dream, when you plan your dream house or you're looking for a house to buy, you're not thinking about the walls and the roof. You're thinking about, does it have granite countertops? Does it have the garden tub I like? Does it have a back porch that I like? But that's actually not the stuff that IBHS cares about. They care about protecting all of those things by keeping those walls and that roof in place after a storm. Okay, so now we are going to take a 5-minute break. And when we come back, we're going to start talking about what is Fortified. I'll see everybody in 5 minutes. Okay, everybody. So before we get started, I'm going to see Paul, are you here?
Yep.
Okay, I want to introduce everybody to Paul Cleveland. He is a fellow State Farm agent, and we've talked about Fortified. We've introduced it a little bit, but I'm going to let him talk to you, agent to agent, about what Fortified has meant to him.
Yeah. Thank you, Sonia. Really appreciate the time again today to speak to the other State Farm agents out there who are interested in this stuff. Kind of want to explain how I got to this point, and it started working for an agent in Galveston County a couple years ago, and finding out that we couldn't write any of the homes as far inland from hurricane wind risk, and as far inland as about Pearland, which is pretty far inland. It drove me insane. And the response I kept getting as to why we couldn't do this was that the risk was ineligible, and it referred to underwriting guide for IBHS exception. And we didn't know what that meant. So it took us 2.5 years, but we finally got on the right page and got the first IBHS homes that we were aware of anywhere in Texas being submitted to State Farm. And so that process really, when you understood it, was not hard. It just took sort of some basic steps to get this stuff done, and I'm kind of go over that shortly. It's, like I said, really simple. Sonia's going to get into this later, but the whole process begins and ends and is governed by your evaluator. An evaluator is basically an IBHS approved, stamped, usually wind engineer out there that does the inspections on the home. Their ability and their knowledge to guide your home builder through the process, which is not really all that intrusive on their end, but their ability to sort of document that, make sure the home was built the correct way, make sure it's inspected properly, and submitting all the forms to IBHS that need to be done. That's the evaluator's job. From that point, once the certification is generated, you simply attach it to the application in your documents page, and then apply the right discount. And then I know for our homes here on the coast, not so sure about the homes further inland, but our homes here on the coast have a 5-year reinspection period they need to go under to make sure everything's still kosher with the house. The cost on the front end is really minimal. For lots of my custom home builds, we see no upfront cost for the home builder or for the homeowner. Most high-end home builders are already building to pretty stout code anyway, and really the improvement there is just doing things a slightly different way and documenting the journey. It's not expensive. I think on most homes we see a $1,500 to $2,000 inspection and engineering cost up front, and that's pretty much the only increase the homeowner sees. The real groundwork that I think you need to do to be successful with this is to reach out to the home builders in your area that build custom homes that will listen to you, and talk about what this does to the insurance rates. Talk about what this does for their homes that they're building and their customers are buying, having less storm damage, and then resale value later on, which again, Sonia's going to hit on later. So it's kind of a triple threat here. The homes are less likely to have damage. The damage that does occur is very minimal. The insurance costs a lot less, and we can bring really good insurance to bear. And yeah, it's just a really good thing, and it helps their resale value later. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, not a hard process, really simple. Reach out to your evaluator, reach out to your home builders in your area. They become a great asset for you. They'll sling a lot of business your way once they understand what this does for their buyers. And that's it, Sonia.
Thank you so much, Paul. I really appreciate your contribution. And if anybody needs to be put in contact with Paul, I hope, do you mind that?
Not at all, but you can find me on Skype, guys, anytime, and ask me questions, and I can direct you in the general direction of who you need to talk to in underwriting. Kate or Sandy or who I talk to. And that's in fact, that's what Sandy's designation now is she's sort of heading up the IBHS effort in Texas.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Paul. That is great information.
Happy to help.
Yeah, so there you have it from somebody who's been able to write better policies because somebody has built Fortified. So we've talked about Fortified. So what is Fortified? Like, what is this program? So first, we're going to go just to the dictionary definition of fortified, which just means to make stronger. We have fortified towns, fortified cities, fortified bridges. You know, if you're into any kind of history lesson, fortified towns usually meant like a big wall around it, you know, to protect it from invaders. But you also have things like fortified breakfast cereal. Well, what is fortified breakfast cereal? Well, it's got extra iron and vitamins and minerals to make you stronger, to make you better. So the fortified, the idea is to make something better. So IBHS, remember, tests everything in the lab and then takes it out and puts it in the real world. So what is a fortified building standard? What is the program itself? It's a couple of things. As Paul mentioned, it is a third-party validated program. So in a lot of cases, builders are building the same way. There are exceptions to that, you know, especially along the coast where they've really increased. There are a couple extra things that they might need to do, but the part that is different is there is an independent third party, IBHS, that verifies that all of this stuff was done to the house. So you're not just saying, well, it was built to code and we know it was inspected, but you actually have that documentation to show this part was done, this part was done, this part was done. Fortified is also voluntary. Even in places where the building code meets that fortified standard, to be a part of the fortified program is completely voluntary. Fortified has two geographically appropriate standards. There's a hurricane standard for the coast and there's a high wind standard inland. We're gonna talk about high wind today, and I'm gonna actually explain exactly how you can tell which one you need to be in, because hurricane winds can get pretty far inland. There are three different levels. There's fortified roof, which just focuses on the roof. Silver, which is roof plus the damage amplifiers, and I'll explain what that is. And then gold is roof plus those damage amplifiers of silver plus a load path. So it is nests, and each of the levels builds on the one below, which was what I just explained. And it is not a new program. It is a well-tested program. Over 35,000 homeowners have a fortified home, and they've definitely been through the ringer in some natural disasters. So we are talking specifically about fortified home. There's actually more than one fortified program. There's fortified commercial, but we're talking about fortified home for this class. So what is eligible for fortified home? Single family detached homes, which are just your standard home. Duplexes are also eligible. Townhomes. A townhome is defined as a home where you own from the ground level up to the roof. So, you know, you'll see like maybe 4 of them together where it's one building and there's 4 doors in the front and everybody walks into their own door. They might even have a garage as part of that, but nobody is living on top of each other. So manufactured homes are actually eligible for fortified as well. There are a couple of caveats. They have to have been built after 1994, and they need to be HUD Wind Zone 3 rated. So once you have those two pieces, then the next question is, what is it attached to? It has to be permanently attached to some kind of foundation. So properties that are not eligible for fortified home, any home on a dry stack foundation. So what I just said about manufactured homes being secured to a permanent foundation, if you've seen, and we have all seen a manufactured home up on a stack of blocks, it's just a stack of blocks and they put the home on top of it. That is not a permanent foundation. That is a dry stack foundation. You also see here in Northern Alabama, I have seen homes literally built on a little stack of rocks on each corner of the house. I have no idea how they balanced those rocks and got the home up there. I'm guessing you may see that in some places in inland Texas. I do see it up in Northern Alabama. Dry stack foundation homes are not eligible. Those foundations, they can be up on piers as long as those piers have concrete rebar and they're attached. They have some kind of strapping to hold the home there. Mixed use buildings and commercial buildings are not eligible for fortified home. They are absolutely eligible for fortified commercial. Multi-unit residential condominiums and apartments where people are living on top of each other, might be, 2 or 3 floors. Those are not eligible for fortified home, but they are eligible for fortified multifamily, which is a part of fortified commercial. So let's look at the numbers for a minute. As you can see, this graph shows when the fortified program started way back in 2011. It's just a couple of, and that on the outside, that's the gold. The roof is there, the green part on the inside. So there's just a couple, and you can see around 2013, you start to see a little uptick. And then after 2016, you really see it start to go up. And notice it's going pretty straight up. So remember, I said as of February 1st, we had over 35,000 designations. So in 2020, there were 7,282 designations total for fortified home in 2020. So that's not last year, but the year before. After Hurricane Sally came through, remember I said all those fortified homes went through Hurricane Sally. A lot of people went out after Hurricane Sally. When I say went out, they went out their front door and their house is destroyed on the inside and they know they need to find a place to live. A lot of people lived in campers that were attached to their houses. And they looked around their neighborhood and they'd see neighbor 2 doors down doesn't have a blue tarp on their roof. And that neighbor's walking around helping everybody else because you know what? He's got no damage in his house. Why? Because he's got a fortified roof on his house. So when that started to happen in March of 2021, there were 1,200 designations in that month. So when people saw how effective fortified was, it became the thing in demand. So again, we talked about building codes being the minimum. Traditionally, building codes have focused on life safety. They want the building to survive. And these buildings in this picture, all of them survive. The buildings are still there, right? But if you look on the left side of the picture, that house had no damage. That is a fortified home. Not only does fortified focus on life safety, but property protection, protecting what's inside the house, not just the building itself. The idea is the building does survive, but it also is reusable in a short amount of time. So after the wind is gone and you can get back to the house, the idea is you can live in it again. So remember, there are 2 standards. There's fortified home hurricane and fortified home high wind. Now we're going to focus on high wind today, but so what does that mean? So for fortified home hurricane, you have a wind speed greater than 115 miles an hour is what your max wind speed is. For high wind, it's going to be equal to or less than 115 miles per hour. So you may say, okay, well now I know what the cutoff is, but how do I find that? You're going to go to this website, and this is all going to be available for you. There's going to be a PDF of the slides that will be available. So hazards.atcouncil.org. So when you go there, you're going to be able to enter an address. You see with the little pink arrow, and you can enter something really generic, like I put Dallas, Texas. You don't have to enter like a street address. You can just put Dallas, Texas. So this is the readout for Dallas, Texas. The maximum wind speed is 105. So this is actually Dallas's high wind, not hurricane. Now I notice the arrow is pointing to risk category 2. It's pointing to risk category 2 because that is residential. So that's what you need to know. Risk category 2 for fortified home, that's what they're looking at. Okay, so here is the breakdown of the difference. So each of them, fortified home, hurricane, fortified home, high wind, each has a fortified roof, fortified silver, and fortified gold. So the roof is the roof, of course. For hurricane, you're adding some attic and ventilation system issues. For silver, you're going to add, those are the damage amplifiers, gables, attached structures, garage doors, chimneys, and you're adding openings, so your windows and doors for silver and the hurricane only. For gold, you're adding a continuous load path, That is an engineered load path, and you're also adding design pressure just in the hurricane section. Barn dominiums are not eligible. Barn dominiums can be eligible if I have actually done a barn dominium, as long as they are tied to the foundation. They are, Richard, if you want to get a little more into the weeds about why you think barn dominiums might not be, barn dominiums are not eligible, let me know. You can fortify a barn dominium as long as it's one. I mean, the ones I've seen, it's been a single family that has lived in it. So if we're talking about multifamily, then it would be multifamily. Okay. So this is just reiterating that hurricane designations are for over 115. So let's take a closer look at fortified home high wind. So you have you start with fortified roof. You're going to keep the roof on and keep the water out. Okay, you're going to have a sealed, we're going to talk about how do we do that? So we're reducing the damage amplifiers to get up to silver. Those are the gables, the garage door, okay? And you're securing your chimney to the house structure below, not just toe-nailing it onto the top of the roof, and attached structures, which are your porches and carports. And for gold, you're adding that continuous load path that is engineered. And you can also add a hail supplement, which we'll talk a little more in detail than we did yesterday. So this is hurricane damage, and this is to show the different things that fortified addresses. So in the center, and fortified high wind addresses all of the things that are shown here. So in the center, you have two houses that have obvious roof damage. I mean, they all have roof damage, but this is what we're focused on. One, you have all the way down to the decking has peeled back because of the storm. And the other one, you have metal panels put over shingles. IBHS, the fortified standard, does not allow 2 layers of roofing ever. And there's a couple of different reasons for that. They require you to re-nail the deck. You can't re-nail a deck if you've still got roofing over it, number one. And number two is, how on earth do you replace rotten decking if you haven't pulled the shingles up to see where the rotten decking is? So it's not a good practice. And there's all kinds of studies that show that having 2 layers of roofing, it doesn't stay with the wind. So on the left, that's a gable that blew out. That is something that would be secured during fortified high wind silver. So that little gable, it actually blew out, if you notice. It didn't blow in, which is interesting how that works, the pressures work. And to the very far right, you have a wall that has blown out, and that is something that is addressed in fortified gold. So one of the things that has been shown, that IBHS has shown with all of their research, is this is the progression of damage. And at the top is roof cover, the soffits, which are the eaves where they overhang that little part there. That's the edge of your roof. And the fascia, which is the side there when your roof comes down and it has a little side piece there. That is what's damaged first. Next is the wall covering, and then the roof sheathing. So your roof covering, your shingles or your metal panels, that's going to come off before your sheathing. Once those things are off, then your sheathing becomes vulnerable. Then the roof structure, and then total collapse. So notice everything, there's a lot of roof in there. So this is just a short video that shows IBHS going out into the community and just asking people on the street about their roofs. And the idea is to show that people really don't know what's on their roof.
What is on your roof? Shingles.
Like general roof, I mean, I don't see anything special.
I don't know.
My grandmother had shingles. I know it's genetic.
Protect from
Weather.
the rain, weather, you know.
This sounds like a trick question. This is a trick question, right?
This is not a trick question.
Keep the roof dry.
I don't know, I feel like divert heat or something.
False. False.
True. True.
False.
The answer is true.
I go false.
Is she always right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I heard like 25 to 30 years.
I think probably like 4 years.
10 to 15 years.
It depends on where you live.
10 to 30 years is what they're supposed to last.
I think I was getting gypped on my shingle guy.
80 miles per hour.
110.
I don't think I'm even close to the strength of a shingle. I would think that I'm like, I can beat a shingle like an arm wrestle.
There are 3 things to consider when installing a new roof. If you want a stronger, better roof, check out Fortified Roof. Second, the optimal time to install is during spring or summer. And lastly, you have a choice when it comes to what is on your roof. For more, follow us on social media at Disaster Safety using the hashtag What's on Your Roof. It's a stress ball.
Bro, dude, I got a stress ball, bro.
Okay, just a little side note, that stress ball is actually a replica of a hailstone. Okay, so roofs, we've been talking a lot about roofs. Up to 90% of losses in a given year is roof related. It's 70 to 90 on an average year. And a lot of that is wind and hail damage. So let's talk about fortified roof. That is the first level of fortified home high wind, and it just looks at the roof. So there are 3 basic tenets to fortifying a roof. Nailing it down. So after the roof covering is completely removed, you re-nail that decking, and you're going to nail it with ring shank nails. And ring shank nails, and there's going to be a picture in a couple of slides that shows you what those are. They're about $100 more than a smooth shank nail, but they double the uplift. And when I say $100 for your average size roof, they double the uplift strength that it takes to pull that decking off. Okay. Second one is you're going to seal the roof deck up. There are several different ways to seal a roof deck. 3, kind of almost 4, and that keeps the water out. So even if you lose shingles or you lose metal panels, the water is still not going to get in. And the last one is adding that drip edge. And you can see, so that's a little metal edge, little metal lip at the top there. So what that lip does, so you imagine here's your roof, okay? And that lip is gonna come over top of your felt or whatever you've got at felt or your underlayment. It's going to hold all that in place. It's gonna be nailed on top of that. So if you do lose that first shingle, the thing that's covering your roof deck, protecting your roof, is still going to be held in place. So next we're going to have a video of a demonstration that was done in the lab at IBHS at the testing facility. This is a 1,300 square foot duplex. It was built exactly the same on both sides. And you can see the wind is just blowing the covering off. Okay, so the shingles are coming off. This we know. The only difference is that side that you saw the roof covering come off has roof deck tape. That is a 4-inch wide tape that just goes down the seams. And you may say, okay, well, you know, how much water can actually get in those little seams, right? Well, a lot. About 60% of the water that falls on a house can actually get through those little cracks. And when it falls through, it can do incredible damage on the inside of the house. So this is what the side without the sealed roof deck looks like. And if you look at the attic, you can see the rain coming in. It doesn't look like a lot, but it adds up. So for this, I think that this was a recreation of Hurricane Florence, I think. And there was 8 inches of rain per hour thrown at this house. With the winds were very similar to Florence. They replicated it. And about 7 bathtubs worth fell inside the attic. And this is what it looks like on the inside of the house afterwards. Look at all of that damage. I mean, you can't live in that house. Everything's going to be pulled out. There's going to be drywall replacing. That furniture is all going to need to be replaced. It's all soaked. The carpets are going to have to be pulled up. So this is the side with the roof deck tape. And that little bit of insulation on the floor, that's from when they pulled the attic steps down to check out the attic to see if any water had gotten in the attic. So the approximate cost for a 2,000 square foot home to seal the roof deck is between $500 and $700. to prevent that kind of damage. So what does that look like as an insurer? What kind of payout are you talking about? So these numbers were 2011 dollars. They have been adjusted to 2020 numbers for inflation. And this was done by independent adjusters. IBHS does not do their own adjusting. They don't do their own figuring of what the damage is. So the roof side, the side that had the roof deck tape, it still needed repaired. It had a lot of roof damage. And the damage estimate was just over $6,000. On the other side, the damage estimate was $19,000. So, you know, but that's just damage. That's not taking into consideration that family cannot live in that house. And when you've had a disaster come through your area, you have to get in line to get that kind of damage fixed, because you and everybody else needs it done. So this is just a slide to show, this was a more recent test done. That one was in 2011. I think this one was 2017. And you can see, again, the side with the roof deck tape, you can walk in, sit down, have your cup of coffee and read your newspaper on that couch. On the other side, you can't even walk inside of it. It's completely destroyed. So when it comes to minimizing damage from high winds and rain, it's the little things that make a big difference. So those are those ring shank nails I was talking about. And that roll of, looks like giant tape, that is roof deck tape. That's absolutely what it is. And then you've got, you're going to cover your roof deck tape with a second layer. And the last is your rafter ties. And that's going to be something you're going to see at the gold level, where you're holding everything together. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the hail supplement. And I've added, for anybody who was here yesterday, this is going to be a little more in depth. So to get the hail supplement from IBHS, I have no idea why there's a blank slide there. You are going to need an impact rated roof covering that is rated for steep slope if you have a steep slope roof, or low slope if you have a low slope roof. So it's specific. Now, low slope is usually 2/12 and under. So we're talking, you know, really low slope. Sometimes you'll see that on somebody's porch. They'll have a real low slope porch. If you have skylights, the skylights need to be impact rated. If you have solar panels, the solar panels need to be impact rated. So you can put things other than asphalt shingles on, but to get the hail rating, the asphalt shingles need to have a good or excellent rating by IBHS. They can't just be hail impact shingles. And we're going to talk about why that is. If you have clay or concrete roof tiles, there is a certain standard. It's listed there, FM 4473 class 4. And if you have metal panels, it's UL 2218 class 4. So now, specifically for shingles, asphalt shingles, IBHS did their own testing. They were asked actually by the insurance industry, by folks like State Farm, their member companies, like, we are losing our shirts with hail. Please help us figure out, is there a way to make this better? So IBHS looked at all the testing that was done, and usually that testing, the impact rating is done with steel balls. So IBHS decided to make actual hail. So the first thing that IBHS did was they used hailstones that they created in the lab rather than steel balls. So this is their shingle rating. So remember, you need excellent or good. So the overall rating next to the manufacturer's name is the one on the far left. Notice they're not all green. And notice there's only a limited number of shingles that have been tested. So to get the hail supplement, you have to use one of these shingles. So how many are there? 6, 7. There's 7 different options. Notice that 2 did not make the grade. Those 2 brands, Tamco Heritage and the Owens Corning True Definition, they pulled their shingles from the market, their hail shingles. They went back and they are testing them, and they want to have them tested again when they reconfigure them. That was revolutionary. IBHS generally does not make product recommendations, but it was, the hail problem was so bad that they actually tested shingles and released their results. So you can find these performance ratings. The website is down below, ibhs.org/hail/shingle-performance-ratings. We're going to watch another short video about why IBHS, why their hail testing is important. So let's take a watch for this. Okay, so IBHS is out there working to give you the information for better hail coverage. I mean, I know that in some places and some companies don't give a hail discount anymore because they don't work. But this information is super helpful and has been shown to work. So once we get past fortified roof, we're going to look at silver. So again, we are looking at those damage amplifiers. So what does that mean? Gables, that's the peak, attached structures or porches and carports that are physically attached to the house, garage doors and chimneys. So this is just a little, it can show you, so gables, where the gable is, that end is vulnerable. A lot of wind can hit it. That is a place that's vulnerable to collapse because of the way that they're constructed. So they can be reinforced quite easily. And this is something that can be done after the fact. So if you have a house that's already built, you can usually get to silver still. Getting to gold is, unless you're pulling all your drywall out, is pretty tough. Chimneys are nailed, often just toe-nailed right on top. So they build a chimney, they stick it on top of the roof, and then they nail it down. It's not attached to the rafters or anything below. For fortified silver, it's required to be strapped to the chimney below, not just toe-nailed to your roof. So there's 2 others. There's the garage door and then the attached structure. We're going to actually look at those in a little more detail. So if a garage door fails during a storm, during a tornado, it makes it much more likely that you're going to have roof damage because the wind will come into that garage and suddenly the wind is pushing on the inside of your garage and pushing your roof up. So let's take a look. I want you to pay attention. At the end of this video was actually a demonstration done in the lab of a garage door that failed. Okay, And you saw at the end, when that garage door failed in the testing facility, the wall is literally like flapping in the breeze there. It's crazy. The windows are still in there and everything. So keeping that garage door in place, so what's called a wind rated garage door will resist those winds way better than especially an older garage door. That's an upgrade that can be made to a home that exists. So attached structure, this is probably the toughest thing to upgrade if you have an existing home. But when they talk about having it attached better, the connections, what we're talking about is the porch column. So your porch column or your carport column needs to be securely attached to the foundation. It can't just be, nailed to whatever is below it. When you go up to that column, at the top of the column, it needs to be strapped to the beam that it touches, and then the beam needs to be strapped to the rafter. So if you think about it, that's a weak point in a house's structure. If that's pulled away, it takes whatever it's attached to, whatever part of the house it's attached to, with it. It also becomes flying debris. So this is a test that was done on a manufactured home, and they had just a regular, standard attached porch. And then they had another one that was attached correctly with the strapping, and it's really attached to the foundation well. And the first one is 80 miles per hour. It fails at 80 miles per hour, which is a wind speed that can be reached in an EF0. And I'm going to say all this beforehand because there is some noise on this. The second carport stayed in place at 80, but it also stayed in place when they put the wind up to 110, which is equivalent of an EF1 tornado. So let's take a look. And you can see how it's a damage amplifier. Okay, so, it's a pretty graphic example of how when a carport or a porch is pulled away like that, how it can damage the rest of the structure. So we've talked about silver, so let's talk about gold. So fortified gold just has that engineered load path, that continuous load path, and we're going to watch a quick video on what does that mean.
Properly tying a house together to create a continuous load path will make it much more resistant to both uplift and horizontal wind forces during high wind conditions, as shown here. The roof must be connected to the walls. The upper walls must be attached to the lower walls. The bottom story must be connected to the foundation. The sill plate, which runs horizontally along the bottom of the walls, can be attached to the foundation using anchor bolts with oversized washers or other metal connectors. Note the large strap at the corner that anchors the wall studs directly to the foundation. This provides a critical connection at the ends of the wall. The bottom of the top wall must be secured to the top of the wall below. The wall studs are connected to the sill plate, which runs horizontally along the bottom of the walls. Again, note the large strap at the corner. This provides a vital connection between the end of the wall above and the end of the wall below. Metal connectors are used to attach the roof framing to the top plate, which runs horizontally along the top of the walls. It is important to make sure that the metal connectors from the roof structure to the top plate and from the top plate to the studs are on the same side of the wall, as shown here. All exterior walls and the roof need to be covered with structural panels that can be made of plywood or oriented strand board, for example. Be sure to include sheathing on areas around openings for windows and doors. These panels greatly increase the strength of the house and will keep it standing strong when high winds blow.
Okay, so that just shows that you basically have rafter ties and ties all the way down to the foundation up to the roof. And then that sheathing on the outside of the house actually strengthens it quite a bit. So let's do a review. We know damage progression begins at the roof, which is why fortified roof is the fundamental portion of all of this, and every level requires a fortified roof. Fortified roof doubles the strength of your typical roof. There are 3 designations: roof, silver, and gold, and each builds on the one before it. So We're at review quiz number 2, and hopefully Jasmine's able to get to that and pop it up there for you. And I'll just read them out and we'll do just like we did last time. Excellent. Yay. Okay. To be designated fortified gold, a building must first meet the roof and silver levels of designation, true or false. A strong roof is the most important variable to preventing damage to a home during a high wind event, true or false. Okay, go ahead and take an answer. Okay. Okay, give it another couple of seconds in case one more person wants to answer. Okay, Jasmine, go ahead and close that out and share it, and let's talk about it. Okay, first question. To be designated fortified gold, a building must first meet the roof and silver levels of designation. This is true. So remember, fortified nests, each nests on the other. You start with fortified roof, you add all the levels, all the things you need for silver, and then add the last thing that you need for gold to get up to that level. True or false, a strong roof is the most important variable to preventing damage to a home during a high wind event. This is true. So fortified roof is the most important part of this, which is why it is the base level that every other level needs to start there. Okay, thank you, Jasmine. Okay. So we're going to take another 5-minute break, and we're going to go quickly through the last part of this. Everybody take your 5 minutes and I'll see you back. Okay, everyone, welcome back. Okay. So let's wrap this up. So this is an example of a neighborhood in Orange Beach, Florida that went through. Sally took the brunt of the eye wall. And obviously this is not a neighborhood on the beach. You can tell by the green grass. These houses were not built fortified, none of them. But the house in the middle has a fortified roof. And as you can see, it has no damage from Sally. His neighbors on both sides had traditional roofs and they did have damage. And they actually, most of the people in his neighborhood could not live in their houses because of the extensive damage on the inside from the water getting in. This also, we've seen this picture before. The house on the left is fortified gold. That is on the beach. That house was built to the fortified standard. All the other houses in that picture, it's a little hard to tell, but they are all damaged in some way. The house, the one that has a not fortified in front of it, that house you couldn't live in because actually it had a lot of water damage on the inside from that roof damage that you see. So returning to that first picture of the house in the neighborhood that was fortified, just had the fortified roof. This is actually the homeowner and the family that lived in that house. And this is what they have to say about having a fortified roof.
You know, one of the biggest blessings that I've been able to see is myself not having any damage because I have a fortified roof and I didn't have the need for tarps and I didn't have the water and storm damage. As I've been able to use my time that I had when I would be working on my house to help others. And that's one of the biggest things people need right now is help. You know, knocking on doors and meeting some of your neighbors for the first time saying, hey, what can I do to help? And, you know, putting tarps up and taking carpet and furniture to the road. I've been able to, me and my family, we've been able to help others out because we didn't have any damage. So definitely feel blessed.
Okay. And now those houses were relatively new. I do want to introduce you to another homeowner who lives in an older home who got a fortified roof and what she has to say.
It really works. People said it sounded like a train, but I didn't hear anything. I was confident that my roof was gonna hold up and it really, no shingles or anything fell off my roof. It was just like nothing had never happened to it. But there's people that didn't have a fortified roof. Their shingles came off. And that made me feel very blessed to have a fortified roof.
Okay, so just evidence that a fortified roof can be put on an older home. It doesn't have to be a brand new home. It doesn't have to be a brand new house. This is a house that was built on Grand Isle in Louisiana that took the eye of Hurricane Ida, which is a Category 4. So this house was completely fine. It had no damage after Ida. That is a fortified gold home. That's a home that was built to the fortified standard. This is the 9th Ward in New Orleans, which a lot of people are familiar because of the damage in the 9th Ward after Katrina. The house in the center has a fortified roof. It's an existing home. It was not rebuilt. It has a fortified roof. And after Ida went through, you can see there's a lot of blue tarps in the neighborhood, but that house had no damage to its roof. This is multifamily. Multifamily is part of commercial. Both of these multifamily housing units went through Hurricane Ida. These two pictures are a quarter mile apart. These two complexes are a quarter mile apart. I don't really think I need to say anything other than the one on the right was actually about 90% complete. It was still undergoing construction when Ida rolled through. Normally when that would happen, that would really push back opening date. It pushed it back 3 weeks. Primarily because their air conditioning units were not tied down. You can see in the foreground there's an air conditioning unit. Those were not tied down, so they just roll around quite a bit. And one of them did sustain damage from the air conditioning unit being picked up and blown into it. So had some siding damage from that because they were partway through the construction. So it was a delay of 3 weeks, but it could have been a delay of months if it was built like the structure on the left. Nobody's living in the structure on the left. That's probably a total loss. Resilience starts with having everybody be able to get back into their home and back to work after a disaster. FEMA, HUD, USDA, and SBA all get it. They all understand the value of fortified. They do not use the term fortified. They are not allowed to use private market terms. They call it P as in Paul 804. That is the high wind standard, and everybody is encouraged to rebuild to that standard. SBA, which is the Small Business Administration, they also give loans to homeowners as kind of a stopgap, and they're low interest loans to help make you whole, like when you don't have enough insurance to cover everything. They will give you 20% more money if you rebuild to that high wind standard. So they know that it works. Nonprofits build to that standard as well. Team Rubicon, Habitat for Humanity, and SBP, St. Bernard Project, all build to the fortified standard. So let's talk about the fortified designation process. So, okay, we've talked about fortified, like, okay, great, you're excited about it. Now, what happens now? So the fortified evaluator is absolutely key in making this happen. Okay, so your fortified evaluator is licensed by IBHS, but they are independent. They do not work for IBHS. They run their own companies. They often are also home inspectors or they're engineers. Only a licensed fortified evaluator can submit a house to IBHS for designation. Only them. A homeowner can't do it. A roofer can't do it. Contractor can't do it. Insurance agent can't do it. Only a licensed fortified evaluator can do it. Because each fortified evaluator is independent, their rates are going to vary. You do have local fortified evaluators, and I'm going to get you that information. Normally I have a slide now that says the names of your local fortified evaluators, but the problem is I have not gotten callbacks from a lot of the people in your area yet. So that will be coming to all of you who registered for this class. So the designation process, let's talk about that. First, you're going to contact an evaluator. Ideally, that's what you do first, not always. The reason for contacting your evaluator first is they really need to get in before construction happens. Once a house is built, once a house is re-roofed, it's too late. You can't get the documentation you need. So once you have your evaluator, you can choose a roofer or builder, depending on your project. You're going to build your house or re-roof your house. Your evaluator is going to work very closely with your contractor to make sure that they're doing all the steps that they need to do and make sure that all the documentation that is needed. They're going to verify everything, retrofits, whether it's re-roofing or the design, and they're going to document everything. So critical for success is documentation. Documentation is usually in the form of photographs, but not always. The photographs are of materials that are used as well as how they're put on. It's not good enough to just have, like, look, these hail shingles were put on this house. There's a picture of the shingles, but they also want to see, how was that roof deck sealed? Having just a picture of the roof deck tape on site is not good enough. They want to see that tape actually on the roof. They want to see those nails. You can circle those nail heads and how many inches apart were they put. Okay. They're also going to pull, especially for gold, data sheets. That is something that your evaluator will do. You don't have to come up with the data sheets yourself. They're going to, if they need to show like that a skylight is impact rated, they're going to get that information for you. There are also compliance forms that your contractors need to fill out, and your evaluator can guide them through that. If you're doing a gold house, you're going to have forms for your engineer as well, and they can help with all of that. So this is a fortified evaluator. He's taking pictures. That is an old roof. That is not a new roof, just so you know. he is documenting. So the Fortified Evaluator gathers all that documentation. They work with your roofer or your contractor. They help them. They gather some of it. They get everything together. They submit everything. And then IBHS reviews everything and they issue the fortified designation. And this is what it looks like. Now, this is a hurricane one. The high wind one is going to have a little bit different symbol there. But I want you to notice above that hurricane symbol, that little gray box, that is a QR code. Keep that in your mind because we're going to talk about that in a minute. Every fortified project, a fortified designation lasts for 5 years. Now, some people are like, 5 years? Doesn't last forever? Well, no, because remember, the roof is key here, and roofs age. They get damaged by wind. They get damaged by hail. So IBHS sends out a reminder every 5 years to the homeowner. The homeowner can contact an evaluator and they can pick anybody to be their evaluator. It does not have to be the evaluator that was used on the original project. The homeowner can pick anybody. The evaluator is going to document home for any changes or modifications. They're going to submit all that information to IBHS and then you get redesignated for another 5 years. So it says here, evaluator documents the home for changes or modifications. What does that mean? Well, if you've put an addition on your house and you haven't had an evaluator there, have you done anything to your roof? Of course, if that addition has a roof over it, which it's going to, you can't fortify half a house. It's going to have to be built to the fortified standard as well as the rest of the house. So when your clients are putting a new roof on, yes, they need to contact their evaluator. Let's say they have a fortified roof and they have damage, like a tree fell on their house. You need to have your fortified evaluator there to verify that what that roofer is doing to fix that damage maintains that fortified designation. If you're putting an addition on a house, again, you got to make sure that everything works, that it's fortified. In closing, if you have a gold level house, or probably, I think it's mostly for gold, if you enclose a porch, you need to contact your evaluator. So lucky for everybody in high wind, the next two, replacing doors or windows or adding a doggy door, don't need to worry about that for high wind. That's just for hurricane. You guys can replace doors and windows because it's not design pressure rated, so you don't need to worry about that. Installing solar panels without an evaluator, that's something else because you're affecting the roof. So your evaluator needs to be involved. So who can do that work? Contractors, home builders, roofers. You do not at this point need to have a fortified WISE roofer do your roofing. It doesn't have to be somebody who's gone through the course, but you have to have an evaluator. You can find certified roofers on IBHS's or Smart Home America's on our website. There's the two website addresses. I'm just going to real quickly, this is our services directory. You can search for evaluator or roofer and search by state. You can search within a certain number of miles of an address as well. And this is IBHS's site to do the same thing. I also want to point you in the direction of the Fortified WISE University. That is fortifiedwise.org, because there are 2 free courses if you are interested, or if you know somebody else who might be interested in becoming an evaluator or fortified roofer, they can take these free courses to see if they think it's something they might be interested in before they, jump into the roofing contractor evaluator course. So let's say somebody comes to you and says, I have a fortified roof, but I don't have the paperwork. How do you tell? Well, remember that little gray spot over the hurricane symbol there, it'll be a high wind symbol on the ones that y'all see. That is a QR code. You can scan that. And when you scan it with your phone, what you should look for is that the address that shows up on your screen matches the address of the person. You can call IBHS. And again, this PDF will be a PDF of the slides that will be available to y'all with this information. But you can also go to their website at fortifiedhome.org/contact and just put in there what you're looking for, what address. However, as State Farm agents, because State Farm is a member of IBHS, you can actually create your own login to check on addresses yourself. So it is ibhs.org/fortified-database. So to do this, you must use your State Farm email. You cannot use another email that you have. You must use your State Farm email. It takes 24 to 48 hours to get approved usually. They do actually vet to make sure that you're an active agent. Once you log in, you can do an address lookup. So you're going to put the street number. My advice is when you put the street name in, you're going to have, like if it's Main Street, you can put Main and then ST, or just leave street off all, so that any of those variations, whether it's an abbreviation or not, is going to come up. So one more quiz, and I know we've been flying through here. We're going to do this really quickly. Actually, yep, okay. A fortified evaluator is critical to the process. Fortified can be used on new and existing homes, and a designation needs to be renewed every 5 years. You can find a list of contacts on our website at smarthomeamerica.org. So last quiz, and then we're going to go through a couple of mitigation things. Thank you, Jasmine. I'll read them. True or false? To get a fortified roof, simply contact a roofer who completes the work and issues the designation. True or false? Fortified standards are only applicable to new construction. And the last one, true or false? A fortified designation lasts 15 years. Okay, people are quick. Okay, let's wait just another couple of seconds. Okay, go ahead and close it out, Jasmine, and we'll review. To get a fortified roof, simply contact a roofer who completes the work and issues the designation. This is false. Remember, a fortified evaluator is the only one who can submit this information to IBHS. Fortified standards are only applicable to new construction. Everyone got that one correct. That is false. You can always re-roof to the fortified standard. And fortified designations last 15 years. Again, that is false. And what evaluators are looking for is not only the state of the roof, but whether or not there have been other modifications to the outside of the house. Let's go on to mitigation incentives. So what are homeowners motivated by? They're motivated by money. So there's been a study done by University of Alabama, Auburn, and University of Mississippi that shows that having a fortified designation increases the home's value by nearly 7%. So their home is worth more, which means that, when they sell it, when they buy it, they have a little more room in there to pay for insurance. So Texas mitigation incentives, we're just going to talk about discounts. If you were here yesterday, we talked about TWIA and some other things. This is not as applicable inland, so we're not going to talk about that. So for insurance discounts, fortified roof actually mimics a lot of the wind mitigation discounts. So a fortified roof will qualify for mitigation discounts as well as for fortified roof discount. State Farm does offer fortified discounts in all 50 states. So I encourage you to find out what that is in your area, and it's going to vary in your area. Hail supplements can absolutely lead to hail discounts as well, but it's a better risk because the requirements for shingles is not just saying, hey, we have a hail resistant shingle, but it's actually been tested by IBHS. Cross-selling is key to retention. So if people are able to bring their insurance prices down a little bit, get a little bit better insurance, they can get other kinds of insurance that they may need. They may need flood insurance, life insurance. We all know, most people don't have enough life insurance. Insurance on other recreational vehicles, rental properties. anything like that, because you're able to write a better quote for homeowners insurance. It's a better risk. You know, they can then, and it's not a matter of just upselling. It's a matter of really getting them the coverage they need. And just as a little aside, 20% of all flood insurance claims come from outside high risk areas. Okay. These are areas that are not flood zones. So what is the resilience, the community resilience? What is that benefit to you? Well, you write better risks. If your community is more resilient, you're going to be more resilient in your business and in your risk taking. You know, for fortified properties, that they have been professionally verified and audited by IBHS. It has the potential to lower your costs. Congratulations. We have covered all the terminology and principles of resilient construction. We've talked about options and consumer benefits, increased insurability of property, and reduced risk of loss, the different levels of the Fortified Home Program. We did not talk about Fortified Commercial today, and the opportunities to lessen errors and emissions. Remember, we're taking that mitigation from the end, like when you recover, rebuild, and you mitigate then, and we are taking it and moving it all the way to the front, where it can do its job to prevent damage and create resilience. So for some resources, here is our website, Smart Home America. We are a 401(c) nonprofit organization. These are two more of our websites. These are Don't Goof Re-Roof and Don't Goof Floodproof that go through the re-roofing program and how to help you find a fortified evaluator and re-roof to the fortified standard. And the Don't Goof Floodproof talks a lot about flood risk, even outside of, you know, what are traditionally considered high risk areas. We've also got that Fortified Wise University for the free courses, and there's all of the information. We do have one final. I would appreciate it if you could take a minute to answer this, Jasmine, if you can throw that up there. How likely is it that you would recommend Smart Home America to a friend or colleague? A 10 is most likely, and 1 is not likely at all. If you're not likely to recommend us to a friend or colleague, I would very much appreciate your feedback, either in chat or you can shoot me an email. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. And we can go ahead and leave that poll up, but I'm going to go to our final slide. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here and giving me your time and attention. If you have any follow-up questions, you can always reach out to me via email. And I hope to see you all again soon. We are actually going to be in Texas in June, so maybe I can touch base with a couple of you. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your day.